I'm in a very good mood this morning. I hope you all are as well. Welcome to Resistance Live for the 5th of September, 2024. We have an ongoing hearing right as we speak in Judge Chutkan's courtroom in DC for scheduling of the January 6th prosecution of Donald Trump. And so we have a few breaking news updates on that I'll share in a minute. And we also have to talk about this brand new, incredibly damning indictment of a far right-wing media source being funded by Russian operatives under the direction of the Kremlin. First things first, I'm coming to you as always from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. Much gratitude to the original custodians of the land on which I sit and work. I am wearing today, for our visually challenged viewers, a cream-colored mock turtleneck with no sleeves. My hair is down. I have my fancy makeup on because I'm speaking on the Democrats Abroad call in an hour. Well, actually, I'm appearing around 1:30 for those of you who want to know. But nonetheless, I am all dressed up today, and I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty, blonde-haired woman. I have my gold hoops in, and I'm in my office in front of my oak cabinet and a pile of books and my wonderful plant. And I'm so glad you guys are here today. Okay, so let's talk about this indictment first because news is still breaking out of Chutkan's courtroom. So here's what happened. Yesterday, the DOJ announced an indictment of several Russian individuals who had paid a right-wing media source to create videos and to repost propaganda that had been designed by operatives for the Kremlin. These are people who previously worked for Russia Today, also known as RT, who then reached an agreement with what we now know to be Tenet Media, which is a Tennessee-based company run by two far right-wing agitators, in which more than $10 million changed hands courtesy of Russian money flowing into this propaganda operation. And implicated in this are a large number of far right-wing media influencers, including names you will recognize like Tim Pool and Dave Rubin. These are people who, over the last few years, have been generating an enormous amount of far right-wing content and interviewing incredibly incendiary, racist, dare I say it, even fascist individuals, including people in favor of like the great replacement theory, on their podcasts. This story and this indictment, and I've read the whole indictment front to back, word for word, is a bombshell. And I don't say this very often on this broadcast because I don't like to kind of like raise expectations. But this is, in my opinion, the bare scrape of the tip of the iceberg of what we are about to learn about foreign influence operations in far right-wing American media. By the way, may be related, may not be unrelated, but there was a leaked instruction from the top of the Trump campaign to all Trump officials yesterday to do no speaking to the media unless they had explicit confirmation that they had permission to do so from the top of the Trump campaign. There are a lot of indications that people are very worried about what this indictment contains. So the long and the short of it is that two people previously employed by Russia Today contracted with the founders of Tenet Media to propagate videos and other forms of social media across like every social media platform you can imagine, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and more, that provided what were essentially given Russian talking points that include incredibly racist statements like, you know, white jobs are vanishing and white people are under threat. Things that we have all seen being just like vomited out of the mouths of far right-wing media figures for years now. There is also discussion in this indictment of the event by Tucker Carlson in Russia when he stood in a supermarket. You will all remember this because we remembered it at the time. Okay, we like noted it at the time because it was so dramatic and such obvious shilling, as it was referred to by the founders of this media company, where he claimed that like Russian supermarkets were so much better than American ones, right? I just want everybody to understand that what is very clear from this indictment is that a very subtle and extremely effective operation has been underway by Russian media, and who are obviously like Russia Today is under the influence of the Kremlin. They take orders from the Kremlin to influence public perception about the issues inside the United States. And this includes, by the way, indications that Dave Rubin and Tim Pool were paid as much as $100,000 per video to talk about these talking points that were being provided from Russian media. Now, Since this indictment dropped yesterday, a number of these far right-wing media figures who have been implicated, and by the way, they're all anonymous in the indictment, but it's very easy to figure out who they are. They have claimed that they had no idea that all this money was coming from Russia. And, one of the things that's very curious about this is that there was a fictitious persona by the name of Edward Grigorian that was created by the Russians. And they claimed that the money that was being used to pay Tenet and pay these influencers came through this individual. However, one of the commentators in question Googled Edward Grigorian and could find nothing, zero on the internet about this fellow, even though he claimed to have previously been a senior director of private wealth at a major international bank. So let me just say this. The idea that they didn't know that something funny was going on with all this money that was coming to them out of nowhere is extremely hard to grasp. Just extremely hard to grasp. And there's no question, based on the indictment, that the founders of Tenet Media knew that they were dealing with the Russians. Now, for those who are like, the DOJ never does anything, where's Merrick Garland? I really want to encourage you to actually go read the indictment. Why? Because one of the things that is so noticeable about this is that the ongoing investigation of the DOJ reached all the way into the WhatsApp chats between the founders of Tenet Media and the Russians. They have documents, they have actual messages, they have communications where the founders of Tenet Media said, we've invoiced the Russians for X amount of dollars. Where's the money coming to pay commentator number one? And I just have to tell you, it looks like this investigation goes very deep. My suspicion is that there have already been people on the inside of this investigation inside the United States who have flipped because it would be very difficult to obtain some of this information otherwise. And as I said, I think we are just at the tip of the iceberg on this, okay? Because if figures like Tim Pool, and I just want to make this really clear to everybody, Tim Pool has been interviewed on Joe Rogan. He has interviewed Milo Yiannopoulos. He's had people like Cernovich and various other far right-wing, like Nick Fuentes, various other quite obviously far right-wing, if not neo-Nazi fascist figures on his show, okay? If he has been getting paid by Russia to front these kinds of talking points, I can pretty much guarantee you that there are other people in the sphere of far right-wing famous media who are roped into this as well. And lest we not forget, who did Tim Pool interview on his show in May of this year? Oh, wait. That's right, Donald Trump. So for everyone who's been saying, like, Merrick Garland's not doing anything, why aren't there any consequences? Why is nothing going on? I'm going to tell you this is a very deep investigation and it's only getting started. Now, some of you may have that thing of like, I had so much faith in Robert Mueller. Okay, somebody said this to me this morning on the Patreon feed. I'm just going to say this, okay? The reason why the Mueller report didn't go anywhere was not because of Robert Mueller. It was because of Bill Barr. And this is one of those moments where you have to reset your expectations about what's coming from this. This is an absolutely damning indictment. Like, they've got them dead to rights on this. And they've seized web domains now, and their, prosecutions are coming, and they're going to seize assets of these Russian individuals if they cannot access assets that they have anywhere else. Okay. Like it is just like, it is rough and it is only getting started. Now, the reason why I am raising all of this today and why it feels very important is because just yesterday on Resistance Live, we talked about the fact that there are known foreign influence operations underway right now inside the United States. And I told you all, I'm just going to stick a pin in this. I want you all to hold tight to this because I'm telling you right now, there are connections that the influence of foreign bad actors on the way that information is circulating inside the United States on social media platforms is not limited to the far right. It's not limited to the far right. And I'm just going to remind you all as well that we know that in pro-Palestinian protests that took place at Columbia University, there were far right neo-Nazi figures embedded in those protests. That there were far-right agitators and influencers involved in some of the property destruction that was of concern, okay, around the country in pro-Gaza protests, okay? So just keep in mind that there is an enormous amount of disinformation and agitation happening that is not legitimate, that is paid actors sowing chaos. And I'm just going to point this out first page, second page of the indictment in this case, notes that there have been communications about what the purpose of Russia Today's foreign influence operations were, and their stated purpose was to sow chaos wherever they could. Why? Because out of chaos rises fascism. And this is also, by the way, contained in Putin's whole worldview about what Russia is doing, about the invasion of Ukraine. There's plenty of other things that are wrapped up in this in terms of issues, but I do want to point this out, all right? $100,000 per video is an insane amount of money. And for far right-wing influencers to be paid like that with directly fronted talking points saying, could you cover this issue from this perspective? Maybe you want to talk about this through this lens. I'm telling you, this is just the beginning. It is just the beginning. Because if they're willing to do that, just imagine what they're willing to do in other arenas. So I want everyone to be very, I feel like I say this all the time. You all know we have this program called Truth or Fiction. Let me turn the banner on here so you can all see it. That will teach you media literacy and how to recognize this information when you see it. But please, I'm just going to beg you all, be extremely careful about what you share online right now. Because the other thing that happened this morning on the Patreon feed was that there were multiple comments that were like, I just talked to this friend of mine who used to be a Democrat and now they're an independent and they're claiming that they're not going to vote for Kamala Harris because she supports the war in Gaza. Okay, I am telling you right now that the thing that we need to be the most concerned about in this election is the way in which operations, domestic and foreign, to influence splits among Democrats on the basis of chaos-driven narratives and all or nothing perspectives is perhaps the most dangerous threat that we face to the 2024 election. And you should all just be extremely wary about what you share. Just be extremely wary because people you know and love are already falling for this stuff and it's not real. It's not real. And the algorithms are amplifying it. And let's not forget that we had news a couple of weeks ago that Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter was funded with Russian money. Okay. Be extremely cautious about what you share, where you get your information, and how you process what you learn. All right. And again, you can take our media literacy and disinformation class at GaiaLeadershipProject.com/truth-or-fiction at any time if you want to learn how to do this yourself. Okay. Let's talk for a second about what's happening in Judge Chutkan's courtroom this morning, because this is ongoing right now and it is big. So what's happening this morning is there's a scheduling conference underway in Judge Chutkan's courtroom. Ordinarily, when you're trying cases in federal court, these are very rote events. They're usually not high stakes or high drama. You're literally sitting in a court and you and your opposing counsel are deciding among the judge what the schedule should be. However, this is a case against Donald Trump, and his lawyers are in that courtroom this morning advocating for a schedule where literally nothing will happen until like December or January. And Judge Chutkan, all credit to her, is having absolutely none of it. Has said to Trump's counsel, I'm not talking about the presidency. I'm talking about a 4-count indictment. It would be great if you, when you get up and speak to me, you would leave all the rhetoric aside and just talk about the facts. So this was ongoing literally right up until I hit the broadcast button to go on the air. But the short version of what we're hearing right now from Jack Smith's team mirrors the scheduling proposal that they filed a few days ago. And that essentially asks for briefing on immunity issues to begin within 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks. And they have made the point today in court that, of course, Trump's team can file an appeal to a federal appeals court in the space of a couple of days. What would prevent them from actually filing an opposition brief within the next few weeks? The answer to that is literally nothing. Okay. And essentially what they're suggesting to Judge Chutkan is they can brief immunity and they can be done with it and they can continue with the trial prep process at the same time. In fact, Judge Chutkan has said this morning already to Trump's counsel, we can all walk and chew gum at the same time, AKA, so can you. Okay. So we're not going to know what the schedule is today. She's already said that she is not going to issue a scheduling order from the bench today. But I would expect, on the basis of what we have seen in her comments today, that we are going to have opening briefs filed on the issue of immunity before the end of the month. And then on top of it, we will have proceeding toward a trial date while all of that is likely going on. The big question right now is whether or not we will see a trial date before the end of 2024. I will just game a guess here that we would probably see it sometime in January. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to see a lot of the evidence Because one of the things that Jack Smith's team has said this morning is that their briefing on immunity will include not just what's contained in the indictment, but also written and documentary evidence about Donald Trump's crimes leading up to and including January 6th. So we're going to get a lot. We're going to get a lot between now and the election from this particular prosecution that is going to be absolutely damning for Donald Trump. And I'm really excited about it. Judge Chutkan's a great judge. I've been very impressed with her all along. She has a stellar reputation. You all know I used to practice on the DC federal bench, like in front of these people. In the earliest days that I was a lawyer, her reputation in DC is amazing. And I think she's running a very tight ship here. And I think like the sooner that she can get this case to trial, the better. So I'm really excited about it, like really just thrilled, frankly, from a political standpoint about what's happening in Judge Chutkan's courtroom this morning. Okay, a couple of other things we got to talk about. We talked yesterday about how Trump's been off the campaign trail. That doesn't mean he hasn't been giving interviews. And he gave an interview on Hannity last night where, let me just be really plain about it, his dementia was on full display. There were comments that he made last night that seemed to indicate that he thinks he is still running against Joe Biden and that he would be shocked if anybody in New Hampshire voted for Joe Biden. So I have to point out that the big unspoken story in legacy media right now is Donald Trump's mental decline. And even this morning, the way that the New York Times portrayed this did not make note of the fact that Donald Trump seems to have confused who he is running against, but instead seemed to indicate that, oh, he just gaffed. You know, that is not what happened. You should go watch the tape. I watched the tape this morning. It's absolutely shocking how he doesn't seem to get it there for about 10 full seconds. So again, one of the things I want people to remember here is that the more that Trump speaks and the more, as I said this yesterday, the more his insanity, his decline, his malignant narcissism, his viciousness, his drive for revenge, his lack of any policy or program or plan is exposed to the general public, the better it is for us, right? Again, this is what is currently being referred to as Operation Let Him Speak, okay? So he's still giving these interviews. They're very softball interviews. He's not getting any pushback from Sean Hannity, but he is showing himself to be far, far, far into decline as compared to where he was even 4 years ago, all right? And that is what it is. All right. Liz Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris yesterday. I got to tell you, I didn't see this one coming. My suspicion was going to be that Liz Cheney, of course, was going to say she wasn't voting for Donald Trump. But I didn't think we were going to get the full-throated endorsement of Kamala Harris that we got from Liz Cheney yesterday in an interview at Duke. And I'm just going to point out that there's something else really fascinating about this, which is that ballots, presidential election ballots, are going to be mailed in North Carolina within the next few days. And so the timing of this, the location of it, the fact that she was speaking to a largely white conservative audience, I don't think any of this was a mistake. And the fact that she said to people, don't write in third-party candidates. We don't need a third-party candidate. Too much is on the line here. I'm voting for Kamala Harris. I mean, that's pretty damn good. And I said yesterday on Threads, this is the only thing I will ever agree with Liz Cheney on, like ever. Ever. Please do not take this as an endorsement of Liz Cheney or her politics or her views. But she's right about this. And it's a really important gesture at a really important moment in a really important place. Because North Carolina, my friends, may just flip blue. Reminder, if you live in North Carolina, vote for Josh Stein for governor. Please do not vote for Robinson. Okay. So that was a very big bit of breaking news yesterday. Okay. Not that we needed another one to prove the point, but there was another horrifying school shooting yesterday in Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. I have to remind you all, like I had sent my kids to the first day of school today. And I know that every other parent and grandparent on this broadcast and in this audience who is sending their children to school inside the United States knows the fear and the panic that goes along with kissing those kids goodbye every morning and sticking them on a school bus and sending them off into a school where you don't know if they're going to come home. It is a choice to live this way and a choice to not ban assault weapons and a choice to live in a gun swaddled, like flooded culture, right? It's a choice. And in case you needed just another reminder, there's only one candidate on the ballot in November who supports an assault weapons ban, and that's Kamala Harris. Okay. You want your children to be safe. You want effective gun safety legislation, you've got to vote for Democrats up and down the ballot. And I'm also just going to point something else out here. Reminder, a great degree of gun safety legislation comes from the states. You need to know the positions of the people you're voting for in your local and state elections, right? Because things are very different for my friends in New York, where guns are banned in large part, than they are for me sitting here on the other side of the Hudson River in New Jersey, okay? Very critical to understand that this too is a primary issue in this election, and we can't forget about it because the lives of our children are depending on it. Okay. Final comment and question for today. You all know, by the way, I'm going to remind you all that I am appearing on the Democrats Abroad call that starts at noon Eastern. So like 39 minutes from now, I will be on. I said this at the beginning, but just in case you want to know, like the rough arena in which I'm going to be speaking, I think I'm on somewhere in the range of like 1:20 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern. But you should get on for the whole thing because it's going to be amazing. Like this lineup is like mind blowing. One of the things that, the last things that I wanted to cover today was an amicus brief that was filed in the 11th Circuit by Crew. And I was asked about this on the Patreon feed. Reminder, you can become a paid subscriber over at patreon.com/resistance live if you want to ask me questions. Subscription started as little as $5 a month. That's less than 20 cents a broadcast. The question was essentially like, what do I think of this brief? Well, here's why. Crew wrote an amicus brief, which if you've been here for a while, you know is like a friend of the court brief. It is essentially a brief that is filed with the permission of the court to attempt to advise the court on a new and novel perspective that is not before the court in the primary briefs, okay? And not everybody's allowed to be an amicus. Not every amicus brief is accepted, but in this instance, Crew has filed a brief before the 11th Circuit, and they have called for the removal of one Judge Eileen Cannon from the case. Now, the reason why this is significant is because Jack Smith's opening salvo did not go this far. And there were a lot of questions as to why, but I'm going to remind you all also that the 11th Circuit has within its purview the ability to remove Judge Cannon on its own. The amicus brief from Crew explains to the 11th Circuit why they should go there, And personally, I think it is a laudable and very important effort. Amicus briefs are often not considered very seriously in many instances by the courts for which they're before. It's a little bit different at the Supreme Court level. But here, this is an incredibly well-written brief. It makes incredibly novel and significant arguments about why Cannon has to be removed. And honestly, I think that it is likely to be, at the bare minimum, seriously considered by the 11th Circuit. So shout out to Crew and their incredible team for writing that brief. And we will see what happens next. All right. Very busy news day. Reminder, we do have this Democrats Abroad call coming up. If you know people who live abroad who are Americans, okay, if you live abroad yourself and you know Americans who live abroad, please join this call. You can go to Dems Abroad and join the call. The registration link is right there on their homepage. But, you know, folks like Nancy Pelosi and Gretchen Whitmer and Cory Booker and Ruben Gallego and Eric Holder and Kira Sedgwick and Alfre Woodard and George Conway and Olivia Troy and me are speaking on this call today. And it's going to go for about 3 hours. You're certainly under no obligation to watch it all, but it's going to be live streamed on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So you can go to the Democrats Abroad page on any of those platforms, and you will also be able to watch the broadcast there. You can also watch it after the fact if you're not able to watch it live. Please join us. I'm just going to remind you all, there are 6.5 million American voters living abroad. Only 14% of them voted in the 2020 election. If we raise that percentage by even a few points, it changes the landscape of this election in unbelievable ways. And half of the people who voted in the last election voted in swing states. You know, 100,000 votes determined the Electoral College in 2020. So this is a really important effort. I'm really excited to be a part of it. I hope you will be a part of it and support the work of Democrats Abroad. Make sure you tell everybody you know who has friends abroad. Like my landlord used to live in London. I sent my landlord this information this morning. It was like, tell your friends. So, you know, please make sure that you are advocating for the people that you know who know people who live abroad or who live abroad, that they have to vote in this election. It's really easy. And you can go to votefromabroad.org to get your ballot. And they are recommending that all ballots be mailed by October 15th. Like November is now if you live abroad. You need to get your ballot. You need to fill it out. You need to send it back. Okay, that's it. I will see you all before too long on that call. I'm very, very grateful for you. Please don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this broadcast. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube because it tells the algorithm that you like this and that it should go all around to other people who may be interested in it as well. And don't forget to share it with your friends, any groups that you're involved in. What I care most about with this broadcast is that this information, which is so critical to all of you, gets out to as many people as possible. All right. Much love to all of you. Super grateful for your presence here. Great honor to talk to you 5 days a week, sometimes 6 if you're a Patreon subscriber. And I will catch you all here live tomorrow. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Bye.